she's saying. You know. There we go.
That's a great song.
Right? She's the only one who got the reference.
I don't know that song. What
sorry,
song is that?
I'm an 80s kid.
Yeah, right. I'm already fucking shit up just by being fucking manic.
We're streaming, technically.
Yeah, we're streaming.
Hello,
right,
world.
Everybody mute for a second. Let Penguin do the
Just a
intro real
second.
fast. Shut up. Not for a second. No literal. All right, so Penguin will do the intro real quick. I'll introduce everybody, and then we're going to roll right into it. Let everybody tell their story, and then let everybody tell their solutions to how they got where they are. Deal? Okay. Penguin, hit
All right. Just so you know, let's see. Hold on 1 second. Let me see if I can get the video. 1 second. Let me see if I can get the video URL up here. If I can't, that's. I hope you didn't hear. No, you can't hear that. All right. Okay, I've successfully gotten the URL back in a backwards fashion, so we're good to go. All right, everybody mute. We're going to go ahead and lead into the introduction.
Wait. Where did you send the URL?
I haven't sent it. Telegram's opening right now, so I can actually paste it. And as soon as I paste it, as soon as I paste it, which is in like 5 seconds, I will go ahead and lead off with the introduction.
All right.
Paste it. All right. All right, stand by. Going to go ahead and start stream. All right, guys, welcome back to the Agora podcast. As you guys know, it's your home for agorism, localism, anti-authoritarian concepts, and radical decentralization in whatever order you'd like. We're back with another panel discussion. So it's not happening anywhere in particular. We don't have a conference, but through the wonders of modern technology and the social networking, we have the ability to get a panel together. This time, I let Sec intro the topic, but we've got a whole bunch of our friends together to talk about addiction and recovery. Sec, how you doing today?
I'm doing spectacular. Just got done with having my daughter's second birthday party today, so that was fucking awesome.
Oh, happy birthday to her. Nice.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So today we're doing a panel on addiction and recovery. So if this is a sort of a sensitive topic for you, just forewarning, there might be some sort of uncomfortable conversations to be had. So you were warned. Our panel consists of today BJ Woods, longtime friend of the show, Drew Cook.
BJ Woods, sorry.
Drew Cook from the Sober Caucus, Gonzo from Escape to Autonomy, Jeremiah Harding from Agora Nexus, Ray from the Let's Make Some Shit podcast, and Tet from down the road from me. Welcome, everybody. Happy to have you all aboard.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Let's start with we'll just start how it shows up on my screen. So BJ, why don't you introduce yourself and just if you have any experience with addiction and recovery, please feel free to tell your story.
Sure. Hey guys, can everybody hear me okay?
Yep, sure can.
Great. So I'm BJ. I don't know how common this is amongst the rest of our panel members, but my addiction that I had struggled with and still sometimes do struggle with is addiction to food. But I don't want to say food, I want to say trash, because the stuff that I was addicted to was in no ways healthy. And yet I grew up in an era where a lot of us in my generation and older generations were told over and over again that this was the way that the medical professionals, health and nutrition experts, and the government itself told us how to eat. And the lower fat, the better. The less meat, eggs, butter, cheese, the better. And this is, my friends, how you get sick, by following these guidelines. And of course, I'm a pretty newly recovered status. I'd say about 4 years now, 5 years. And, I'm still learning stuff every day. And there's a lot of stuff that you think you should trust when you're growing up in a society of indoctrination, misinformation, disinformation. And so this is how you get addicted to trash, by trusting the so-called experts, seeing your dad have 2 heart attacks, a quadruple bypass, and have the entire household be told, can't eat eggs, can't eat red meat, can't do this, can't do that. We were never a big red meat and eggs family anyway. We had a variety of food, but it's very easy to get addicted to the stuff that they market as quote unquote healthy. And that was my downfall, health-wise, behavior-wise, addiction-wise. And my recovery, I'm still recovering. Basically, I would say I'm 90% carnivore. I spent a few years trying to rid myself of processed food. Most of it is full of starch and sugar. And not that there's anything wrong with starch and sugar, but if you live in the USA and you were born anytime after 1970 something, chances are pretty high that your body has already got Roundup in the DNA and a lot of other things. And you're already predisposed to diabetes, heart disease, a lot of things that even if you are working hard to avoid and you quote unquote eat healthy, you might still wind up sick and fat. And so that's where I'm at. And that's basically the gist of my path to liberty as well. Opening my eyes to seeing what I'm being told versus what they're telling us not to do, and figuring all that out on my own. So.
Yeah, right on. Thanks for sharing. Drew, you're up next. Drew Cook from the Sober Caucus. If you would introduce yourself to the audience and give us your story.
Yeah, I'm Drew Cook. Really glad to be on here with all these amazing people. Man, I was a weird fucking kid, right? Like, I started out life. I had zero social skills. There was a lot of abuse in my home. I go to school and I was fucking weird, man. I was the weird kid nobody wanted to talk to. And so I was an outcast there. I just never could quite find my place. And I remember the first time, so that, like, when I was growing up, that was like the Johnny Be Good medication days, the Ritalin and Vyvanse and whatever else. And so my parents, saw me not functioning at all, or having friends or any of that, and getting in trouble at school. And so they started sending me to these head doctors, and they started filling me full of amphetamines. And I learned real early on that I liked that shit. That was the thing, that I remember having this thought that, I can take something outside of me to fix something inside of me. And I kind of chased that, when I turned 18, I left the parents' house and kind of just went and found my own way, and, man, just partied for a lot of years. And at first it was like fun, man. It was fun until it wasn't, like, I can't tell you, like, when that moment happened, when it shifted from, weekend warrior to just like an everyday thing to just doing enough to just barely scrape by. But, I found myself there, and where, from the outset, I could easily say, well, my addiction was this substance or that substance. At the end, it was just oblivion is what I was after. Like, I just didn't want to feel, didn't want to, have to deal with reality, didn't want to have to face anything in life, because I would fail is what I thought, time and again. And through a lot of bumps and bruises and scrapes, I started winding up and various detox facilities and inpatient treatment centers. And, you know, I started my recovery journey through 12-step programs and learned a lot about myself. I mean, man, when I came in, I was reduced to the animal level. Like I didn't even know how to have basic personal hygiene. Like I knew nothing about being a responsible adult human. And these people like did not only did they not judge me for that, but they like showed me how to correct some of those things. They took the time to like make me feel heard, make me feel loved, and like just lifted me up, man. And that's really where it started for me, you know, is in the rooms. Over time, I've kind of gotten away from going to meetings, and now I have there's a harm reduction organization that we started up out here in Oklahoma City, and that's recovery for me. You know, is like having those interactions out here on the streets, meeting people, getting to talk to them about like, hey, I've been there, I've done that, I understand, you know, and hell, just being somebody that doesn't judge them or criticize them, you know, being able to be that person for them that somebody was for me once upon a time. And that's an extremely condensed, you know, nutshell version of what brought me to where I'm at today. But yeah, thanks, man.
Yeah, thanks, man. Appreciate you sharing. Gonzo, you're up next.
Oh man, I have a lot of echoes of what Drew just said. I guess the getting into drugs started at I was probably 8, and all manner of psychological medications from lithium to Adderall, and they basically had me on uppers all day and then tranquilized me at night, and that's how I got through my childhood. Um, on the recovery side of things, an interesting thing I did when I was in high school, I went to a charter school for basically bad kids that got thrown out. I caught my first felony when I was 15 from drugs. And so I developed a drug education program. They wanted me to implement the DARE program in that school, and I was like, no, these kids don't like fucking cops. I don't like fucking cops, and the DARE program is fucking trash. So I developed from the ground up a drug education program. And by the time I was out of high school, I started doing all those drugs. So it didn't really stop me. But where I've ended up now, I'm almost 40, and I enjoy drugs. I'm not against them. I don't think that responsible use of drugs should be discouraged. I do believe heavily in harm reduction and being honest with yourself, though. Um, you know, I've tried to dial things back. In my 20s or 30s, I would just do whatever you put in front of me, and now I do selective things when I want to and for reasons. I try to be cognizant and not constantly out of my head, if that makes any sense at all.
Yeah, I can dig that. Well, yeah, thanks for sharing that, man. And Jeremiah, you're up next.
Europe. Okay. So I've never the only real drug like I've ever been addicted to is caffeine, and I've been addicted since I was 4. But I had a tendency toward addictive like behaviors, I guess you could say. I just never really crossed that threshold where I needed it for any given reason or relied on it for any sort of chemical stability. Like it was still an every once in a while thing. But I did start to do quite like not like every drug, but like I started out with weed, and then I moved on to things like spice and salvia. And spice really, really threw me off. It put me through quite possibly the worst experience I've ever had in my life, because those of you who know me know that like I sort of pride myself on what I understand, what I know, how well my brain works. And this shit reduced me to the mental age of 4 while I was screaming no in my friend's backyard, as 2 other friends watched. Um, and just trying to scramble and recollect my thoughts. I remember this point during the experience where I was sort of sitting outside and like trying to collect my thoughts, and then I realized I couldn't think. I couldn't really think at all, and it reminded me exactly like I just snapped back in my mind to being 4 years old, and thought, well, am I just sitting on the on one of the ramps outside school, because it was like a trailer with a ramp on it. And I was like, well, if I put my head up and it's wood and not metal, no, I am at my friend's house and I've destroyed my brain. And so I did that, and then the screaming started because I couldn't think. There was like a point during this terrible experience where I was literally like flatlined in terms of thought. My vision went away, and like I was apparently biting my own tongue, and they were concerned I was going to bite it off, so they were screaming at me. And when I eventually like got enough cognition to, you know, to realize what was happening, I had to reach in and manually open my mouth because I forgot how to do that. It was an extremely bad experience, and it lasted apparently an hour and a half that felt like, all evening and into the following morning. I could continue to go into detail about all of the things surrounding that, but basically, it traumatized me in such a way that now I'm basically what could be termed as chemically scared straight. And, I can't have anything at this point except booze. And so, like, I could still get drunk and not feel like I was back there, but I couldn't get high in any way without feeling like I was back on that terrible spice trip. I tell people all the time, don't do spice at all, ever. If you're gonna do anything, you should stick to natural stuff and probably just stay clean and sober is the best choice. And personally, the reason I was into substances at all, like I started drinking hard liquor when I was 14, like small things in the fucking restroom at high school. Um, and the the general like gist of it was that I never really got addicted to that stuff, but it was a handy way to escape the town that I hated, the circumstances that made me grow up like, below poverty in an extremely dirt road, rural, like way out there area that nobody gives a shit about, and that had nothing to do, nobody to do it with. I was bullied. There was a lot of reasons, but like the general like vibe of it was that I was only into substances at all because shit sucked, yo. So like I might as well. And like I'm proof that the environment is like what impacts a significant amount of that, and I can get into that a little bit later as well. Because as soon as I came up to Spokane, I sort of told myself, you're not going to buy any booze while you're here. And I still have not. And I've been what amounts to clean and sober for basically 4 years now. And I'm probably never going back because, it getting drunk is fun. Salvia was great. And weed was fine. But like the fact that it got to the point where I was willing to try something just weird and experimental and synthetic shows where my head was at. It shows that I wasn't in a healthy place about any of this. And it shows that I could very well become an addict at some point. Anyway, like even if it didn't bring me back to that really terrible place, and like I've met way too many addicts to know like that's not going to go poorly if I decide to like, hey, yeah, it's going to feel bad, but I'm going to do it anyway. What why would I do that? So it's one of those things, like, everybody's got a journey, and I just hope that with some of the experiences shared here today that maybe we can get like enough sort of, I guess, solidarity between people that like people can recognize, hey, I'm not alone, and there's, resources if I want to get them, and ways out, because like as soon as I moved up here, I've basically not wanted booze. So like here is much better than where I was. There's more to do. It's a better place. And yeah, I'm 4 years at this point, basically.
Well, good for you, man. Appreciate you sharing. And yeah, that's kind of the intention of having this panel, is just, to sort of remove the stigma surrounding these topics, and to help support anybody that might be going through something similar, and not be afraid to talk about it.
For sure. Oh, and
Um,
everybody, that's my core message, I guess, would be never touch spice ever. No reason.
Yeah, it doesn't sound fun. Penguin, you're next on my list. Do you have something to add here?
Well, when I was going to come on here, I was thinking, am I going to come on here just as a producer? Maybe to say my little blurb at the beginning. And yeah, basically, I haven't experienced any of the same experiences with like addiction and substance use. It's been problematic or anything exactly in this ways you described. But again, a lot of the stories that I've heard in people's introductions, I certainly relate to a lot of the stories, a lot of the backgrounds and experience that you guys have had. So I'm really excited to hear the conversation and to learn a lot. And then I was thinking when BJ started, though, of course, back in the beginning, I do smoke cigarettes, and I would like to quit. And we know it's highly addictive substance, and they don't make me feel that great. And increasingly, even the minimal amount I smoke, which I certainly should not be smoking cigarettes for multiple reasons, but they're not making me feel great and hurting my physical fitness, physical health. So I loved if anybody had any advice to how to get off of those. But yeah, I'm really excited to hear what the panel has to say for sure.
Right on. Let's see. Ray, you are up next. If you would introduce yourself, please.
All right. Hey, guys. I am Ray. I am half of the Let's Make Some Shit podcast, and I am a recovering opiate addict. And I definitely could pick parts of what all the previous speakers have said and can relate to all of them. I don't know if I really was the weird kid, but in my mind I was. I never felt like I belonged or fit in, or always had a hard time making friends. And I also started drinking and smoking weed around age 14 or 15, and felt like I could fit in and talk to people, and I don't know, it wasn't really a problem then. I guess I didn't see it as a problem. But years later, looking back, I got alcohol poisoning the first time I ever drank. I chugged a bottle of peppermint schnapps and had a couple screwdrivers, and it was really bad. For me, it's always balls to the wall, all or nothing. People would hand me some pills in high school. I take them, be like, oh wait, what are they? Oh, that's Xanax. Only take one, and it's like, okay, well, give me three. And I was just checking off, the drugs, kind of went through them, did them all. And in my early 20s, when I found opiates, I was just done. I just that was it for me. That was the one, And I struggled with it for I don't know, maybe 15 years. And, it's definitely just kept getting worse and worse. And I was a highly functioning addict. I never let it affect my work. So my habit was always funded. And I lived that lie for so long that I started believing it myself. And in and out of treatment centers, in and out of meetings and programs. And really, I definitely recommend to anybody who is just looking to get clean to check out meetings. They're a great place to meet people, and you really learn a lot about yourself. But as far as staying clean, it really didn't help me. And I know a lot of people in the program would maybe say, maybe I didn't apply myself to the program and the steps enough. But tried to do things my own way still for a while. And around 2015, when I was in and out of treatment centers, I was in one for 3 weeks, and before my insurance kicked me out, and I was coming off a heroin, and if anybody knows, like, that's no time at all. And there was a point when I got out that I was like, I can't go back to that way of life, but I didn't really know what else to do. And attempted an overdose, and it was probably a cry for help, but at the same time, if it happened, it happened, and I was willing to accept that. But it was kind of at that point that I made it back into treatment, and it's around that time also that we're kind of starting to get into libertarianism. My husband, Dag, was starting to get into it, and I'm very grateful for him. He stuck by me through all of this, and having a support system is really key when you're trying to get help. And slowly started realizing how important personal responsibility is in your life, and that realizing that nobody was coming to save me, and that if I was going to do anything about it, I would have to take those necessary steps. And so like I said, I don't know if I'd really necessarily recommend my way to recovery for everybody, because it's really just, it took years of learning to be honest with myself, because I was not honest. I was manipulative, and I lied through my addiction. And so it took a lot of self-work to learn to be honest with myself and with others, and to identify those times where I was slipping, or where maybe I was afraid I was going to slip, and ask for help. And it's something that I'm still learning and, working through. But I just kind of learned to avoid certain things. And if I have to change the way that I do things, I'm willing to do that. But like I said, meetings are great. You learn a lot about yourself, and it's a great place to start for anybody looking to start getting clean. Sorry, I was kind of nervous, if you could tell.
Oh, you're good. Thank you for sharing all that. We appreciate that. And yeah, something I think that we might discover here is there's not necessarily one road to, recovery or any kind of self-improvement. These things might be somewhat individualized, depending on the person. And I think that's something we'll kind of see here as this conversation goes on. But who's up next? Tet, you're up next.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I have, I guess, two things to address from some things previous people said. First off, Gonzo is not in recovery. He's still a juggalo. Second off, Penguin, you could quit smoking cigarettes by just buying Black and Milds. That's what I did. But okay, but yeah, I don't know. I pretty much as soon as I had like knowledge and access to like anything that would like get me fucked up, I would do it. And then like my first girlfriend in ninth grade, or like my first like real girlfriend in ninth grade, had eye surgery, and that was like 98. So like they gave her like 2,000 Vicodins, and like she didn't like them, so she gave them to me, and I definitely like fell in love with them like right away. And basically, not that like I wasn't like hard addicted to opiates like the whole time, but like off and on for like the next 15 years or so. And I ended up addicted to heroin just because it's like cost efficient. Like like once they got rid of the good oxys, like it's just much you could get pretty high for $20 or $40 instead of like 50 or whatever the fuck. I don't know. So yeah, it just became cost efficient to do heroin, and I ended up selling heroin. That was like how I funded my habit. Instead of like, not that I like never stole shit or whatever, but like instead of like becoming like a thief full time, I just sold heroin. Um, and yeah, I guess like before that though, like I was selling weed, and like I would end up with people like trying to trade me pills, or like asking if I could get pills or whatever the fuck. So um, yeah, and yeah, I was addicted to heroin for a while. It sucked. Um, I was in recovery programs off and on, like since high school. Like my parents would I guess like the first time like my parents sent me to one in probably like 11th grade or something. But I always like I think that for the most part they're completely full of shit. It was never going to work for me. I was never going to accept like that I had to do things their way and like believe in their steps and like the higher power shit and like I don't know. I just thought it fucking sucked. I still do. I would for me it was not that was never something that was going to work. I eventually was just tired of being sick all the time and went to the methadone clinic. So I was there until what, 2016 or something. I went for like 4 or 5 years ish. And last time I did heroin was in 2014. It's like I was still using while I was at the methadone clinic for a while until it was like eventually I just kind of didn't know any of those people or like all my friends died. So like I don't know. I wouldn't know where to get heroin anymore, really. So that's helpful for avoiding it. Um but yeah, I don't know. Like it for me it was never like oh this is sad you're wasting your life or like I'm a loser. It was like no, I'm just tired of being sick. Like philosophically there's no reason not to just do heroin every day. I don't know. Anyway, that's basically my story. Yeah, I still am addicted to tobacco and I smoke weed every day, but yeah. Um no opiates for almost 9 years. And
Oh.
yeah.
Good for you, dude. Yeah, thanks for sharing all that, man. I guess I'll share my fucking deal. Let's see, condensed version, so we don't take up too much time here. But I don't know. My parents started smoking weed with me when I was like 7 years old, right? So started smoking a bunch of weed. My childhood was pretty traumatic, and I was an angry young man, and I was also, yeah, kind of a weird kid. I was hung out with the punk rock kids and fucking whatnot, and the weirdos. And same as Jeremiah, I don't think I was ever really addicted to anything except caffeine and cigarettes, but I was somewhat addicted to having a good time, and I would just anything you put in front of me, I would just do it throughout my teens and maybe in my early 20s at the latest. And I was selling a lot of drugs. So it was essentially free. So I was never really out anything out of the pocket. And I left home early on and got an apartment early. So my house was just the fucking party spot. And we were doing a lot of ecstasy and fucking psychedelics and cocaine and whatever else. And just part of it was that was the only way then I knew how to have a good time. And I was a depressed and angry young man, so like I needed to have a good time to sort of escape my own brain. And it's kind of an odd dichotomy in a sense, like in some sense at least psychedelics help me process through a lot of trauma and sort of mental issues I was having at the time. Um, Jung would call this like shadow work. It helped me do the sort of interior work that and smoking a lot of weed and reading a lot of philosophy and stuff and psychology. But in some sense, like the hard drugs were causing me problems, but the psychedelics were helping me work through it. So I have sort of a mixed feelings about drugs in general. And then when I was like 18, my mother died, and that hit me pretty hard. And it turned into from like fun, trying escapism to like, in some sense, self-destruction. Like I was trying very hard. But then I had kids young, and that kind of, it's not that I never did drugs again, but it wasn't an all the time thing after I had kids. I, sort of I guess, shaped up or whatever and just fucking handled business. But, you know, we'd still party every now and again, even after the kids were born. But I've the only thing that ever got a hold of me was coffee and cigarettes, and I'm still doing those to this day. And I've quit cigarettes like 4 or 5 times, and I keep going back to them. But yeah, that's I guess my deal. But it sounds like we, oddly enough, came to this situation from similar circumstances or similar life paths. So there's a pattern I'm noticing. That might be that we're, you know, all anarchists, so we were all the weird fucking kids growing up, you know. But
Yeah, I'm not surprised that we have kind of convergent stories, or yeah, basically, or not convergent isn't
100%.
converging now, but like similar backgrounds.
All probably, I'm guessing everybody in this room was totally nonconformist kid. Yes, I was a statist, but I still fucking hated a lot of shit. And I had to turn to things to deal with it. I could see through
Same.
teachers. I could see through teachers and authoritarians BS. And rather than saying that, I had ways of expressing myself, which was basically not cooperating, refusing to do things. My parents thought I was fucked up. They took me to psychologists, all this other shit. And it was just like, you know what? I just had already had enough of people by the time I was 11. So
yeah, same. Jeremiah, you had something to say here?
Yeah, okay. So in the chat we got going here, it's a like sort of sidebar chat. I'm not sure the live stream can see that, but basically the there's an experiment that really highlighted a lot of this. It's called Rat Park. Some of you have probably heard of it, but for those of you who haven't, basically experimentative thing where they tested rats' level of addiction to cocaine by like exposing them to various stimuli within their cages or removing all the stimuli in general in their cages and seeing like what their level of addiction to these substances would be. And basically the rats kept on going back to the cocaine the worse the environments were. And like they basically found out that the opposite of addiction isn't necessarily recovery or sobriety. The opposite of addiction is community and, you know, health. And like they gave them more things to do, more rats to fuck, more like things to like stimulate themselves with. And the more that happened, they eventually found out that the rats would not touch the coke water if they had a good enough life. And I feel like that's the same thing in like meat space with humans. It's like I wasn't into booze because I love hangovers. I was into booze because the desert sucked and I didn't have jack shit to do. And the people there I hated. I was bullied as a kid. I was abused by a parent. You know, I was a child of divorce. You know, there's like a laundry list of fucked up shit in me. Also, probably a little bit of brain trauma as a baby because something fell on me during a very bad earthquake. You know, like just a laundry list of things. Like I'm bipolar type 1. I've got, you know, ADHD, and I've got all these conditions that the docs didn't even like properly medicate me for, but they really tried hard because like I was responding to my environment by being the way I was. You know, it wasn't that I was like this all the time because of, you know, fate. It was that I was this way because I was responding to the cage I was put in. And that's like my practical, like personal experience. But like there are so many examples of this that like they built us a prison planet and stuck us in shit ass oppressive abusive cages, and we're acting just like those rats, addicted to X, Y, and Z, you know, because that's the way to handle it. It's a bad way to handle it, but it's like a way out. And so, you know, they make everything terrible. You're going to seek one or more types of escapism. You know, that's the foundational thing I wanted to bring up, is that I think that's really the root here, is that it's less internalities and more externalities that start at the foundation. And then once you realize that, and you realize what's going to like put you in that position, you can start to take the steps to better your environment and your outlook in your life in general. BJ says she wants to add something before she ducks out.
Yeah, sure, real quick. BJ.
Sorry, I thought I unmuted myself. So I definitely agree with what Jeremiah just said, and just kind of add on to that, that there's a lot of ways that people try to cope with life in general, and understanding the mechanisms of how to do that when you're young. It seems like the majority of the group here was very young. Is impossible to fathom because you're just a kid, right? Even if you're like 17, 19, you're not developed mentally to the point where you understand adult situations in society and how things work. And so I have to really agree that, using an addiction to cope or to escape or to, rebel, using these things is really easy to do. It's a trap that anybody can fall in. You don't even have to be a kid, you could be an adult. And just being able to talk about this stuff is really helpful. And I also have to agree with meetings. Even though I had my addiction was basically food, I did have to go through the paths of AA and NA and that kind of stuff, because when I was in a secondary school, a vocational school where I lived on campus, I was done with school, but I was waiting for the next transition, which was sort of like a way for me to branch into regular college. And it's like, it's hard to explain, but it's basically, it was Job Corps. And back then you were basically paid to go to school. And I was an honor student according to their standards. And I was finished with all my classes, but I still had to go to classes and show up and like maybe help certain professors do this and that and the other thing. And rather than go in, I just partied. And I wasn't like, I don't think I mean, people always think, oh, you didn't have a problem. Sure. Okay, Jan. But the thing was, is like, I was partying with my friends. I had nothing to be responsible for. And they decided to say, well, you need to go to treatment. You need to do this and that and the other thing. And when I left 14 days later, yeah, I did the half-ass version. When I left 14 days later, I was like, it's like that whole part of me didn't even happen. It was like 6 months of just goofing around and experimenting. But I will say that having to be forced to go through that really helped me understand people and how they coped with addiction and how they saw a path to recovery or didn't see a path to recovery. And I think it really helped me empathize with a lot of situations that people had. And it was also difficult because I got to be the person that everybody could criticize because I wasn't addicted, but I was forced to go there because the school wanted to make an example out of me. So very weird story. I know it sounds weird, but it's true. And like my parents were like full on, the whole after school special where the high school kid is like stoned and like does have a problem and like does have to go through all the stuff, and the parents are like shaking them like, why won't you wake up, Johnny? And it's like in the fucking 80s. Some of the older people are probably relating to that. And my parents were totally that. They were playing that role like, we want you to be better and this and that. And it's like, okay, what? Like I had to go to a halfway house for 3 months after that. Like my parents didn't want me to come home. And then like, lo and behold, after having to do all that stuff, I just went and got a job and like started being a normal person. And like on the weekends, I would have a couple of drinks and maybe smoke a bowl. And that was it. I mean, I held down a 40-hour-a-week job where you had to wear a suit and pantyhose. It's like the early 90s, and you get kicked out of your office if you're not wearing a proper outfit. All that kind of bullshit. Like the things that people have to go through just to kind of like prove themselves and also like survive in this weird, like strange society. Like I think it was Gonzo who was saying something about how people should be allowed to do whatever they want, and I don't have judgment on people who are if they relapse and things like that. I mean, I just want people to understand that it's a delicate thing, but it's also something that we all get a chance every day to fix. So thank you for letting me speak my piece.
No, thanks for sharing that. Are you heading out, BJ?
Sorry, I'm muted. Yes, I am.
Okay, well, thanks for stopping by. I appreciate you sharing and joining us for this. This was cool.
Yeah, thanks you guys for sharing too.
All right, peace, BJ. Ray, you wanted to say something. Yeah, Ray, go ahead. You're muted.
I hit the wrong button.
Oh, okay. You hit it
Damn, I
again.
did it again. Fuck. I was just going to expound, I guess, on what Jeremiah was talking about with like the rats, and it definitely, personally in my recovery, finding fulfilling activities to do, things that bring you joy, you know, outside of your job or whatever, like, has been paramount to helping me get out of my head and not constantly be like thinking about, you know, my addiction or using or something. And it's helped me to find things that I enjoy doing and kind of like a thirst to keep learning more. And that was kind of like definitely a big thing with starting our podcast, you know, the Let's Make Some Shit podcast, and kind of learning new projects and sharing. And then also I just wanted to, there's something I had forgot to say, and it kind of, some things other people were saying made me think of it. And like like I said, I feel like meetings are good, you can learn a lot, but I didn't say this either, that I still smoke weed, you know, and I drink. And when I was going to meetings and at my most desperate times, you know, I was willing to try anything. And I was like, okay, if I have to quit smoking weed, you know, to do this program, I will. And it wasn't until like years later when I had a therapist, and she was like, I have known more heroin addicts as clients that have, you know, been able to stay clean and off opiates that do smoke weed. And it was kind of that first time where it's like, okay, well, maybe there are other ways, you know, besides NA. Because if you go to NA or, you know, those 12-step programs, they really make you feel like if you don't follow their rules and steps exactly, you're going to end up in jail, institutions, or dead, you know. And I just didn't really prescribe to that. I felt like they really promoted the victim mentality, you know, and I didn't really subscribe to that either. And like I said, I really kind of, yeah, harm reduction. Yeah, Gonzo saying that in the chat, like definitely. And, you know, just kind of, like I said, just realizing there are other ways to do it besides that way. And however you get to that way is great, you know, and you can just, I think once you remove those substances and your mind starts to clear and you really kind of really start to get in tune with your body, because it really wasn't until after I started getting clean that I was kind of noticing things that my body was saying or doing or, you know, craving or needing. And, you know, like once you are kind of more in tune with those things, it's kind of easier to keep going in the right direction, I guess, I think is what I wanted to add.
Yeah, right on. Does anyone have, there's a lot of shit going on in the chat. Does anybody have anything to add to this particular topic, whether the 12-step or the rat experiment? Tat, go ahead.
Yeah, no, like I just always really thought it sucked, like that. It's like, okay, so for example, the like recovery thing I went to when I was like a teenager. This one day they wanted to do this like ear acupuncture shit, and like I didn't fucking want to do it. Like it was creeping me out. I was not into the idea, and they like just were, I don't know how, like they were just like, well, if not everyone wants to do it, then the group doesn't get to do it. And they were like fucking peer pressuring me to do it the same way they talk about like fucking people giving you drugs or whatever. I'm like, I don't fucking like this shit. I don't want to do it. Like, leave me the fuck alone. And they wouldn't. You know what I mean? It's like I eventually was like, all right, fucking fine. And it like wasn't that bad, but I don't know, man. I didn't like that. I didn't like the like they, I don't know, like they just fucking act like that. And okay, and like one time when I was in one of those groups, I was saying like it seems like a lot of, like what you're pushing is that we're supposed to be addicted to not doing drugs. Like we're supposed to like stay in these programs the whole, like, and you know, paying you or whatever in some cases, right? And it's like I don't want my whole life to be this forever. And they're like, well, that's, you don't have that choice. You're an addict. You're always gonna be an addict. You have, and like I don't fucking like their attitude. It's like, dude, just because you were, because like the guy who was like leading this particular group or whatever the fuck. He like fucking he had been a real bad alcoholic. Was talking about how he like would sleep under bridges and shit. And it's like, okay, but dude, that was never me. Like just because you feel like you need to, is that's I guess part of his addiction to not doing drugs is that he has to fucking come bully fucking high schoolers. I don't know, man. It just I don't like that shit. Fuck them. Anyway, that's all.
Right on, Ted. Right on.
Hey, real quick, I'm just gonna say that you would find, if you haven't already heard the song "Step" by Ministry, you would find that funny. It sort of mocks those sorts of people.
Yeah, Ministry's
I'm
great.
vaguely familiar with Ministry.
I fucking love Ministry, but there's also, okay, since we're on a song, and then I'll let Gonzo, then I'll let you in. There's a song by a band called Mischief Brew called Coffee, God, and Cigarettes, and it's about going a 12-step, and he says, I used to worship whiskey, now I only drink the Lord, and I take my coffee, cream, and 7 sugars. Before we meet, we stand out on the sidewalk as it pours, swapping one addiction for another. So that's the other thing about the 12-step that always kind of made me chuckle is, you know, okay, we're clean and sober, but meanwhile we're drinking fucking gallons of coffee and chain smoking cigarettes.
Yeah, and like letting like 16-year-olds chain smoke cigarettes or whatever.
Right. And not
Like
recognizing the contradiction there, it's like, oh, well, obviously some drugs are okay to you and some are not. You know what I mean? That's implicit in what you're allowing here. So that almost seems to me like, well, is it just legal drugs that are okay with, like, I don't understand the thing there. But I mean, if it fucking works for you, do it, but that's I've never been a huge fan either. Gonzo, you're up.
So I think that harm reduction is the big thing when it comes to dealing with your own addictions. The one thing that I do agree with from the 12-step programs is that you have to be the one to admit that you want to change something. Like everybody telling you, listen, I don't want you doing that. You're hurting yourself. Fuck off. Like, this is my fucking life. I have to get through it. You are secondary to this. And what I realized, I was eating massive amounts of painkillers and Xanax and snorting Valium and just generally being a terrible human. And I did, 6 or 7 hits of blotter acid. And I realized that I had forgotten so much over the past couple years that I had been doing Xanax, and that I came to a realization that that was something that I wanted to change, because during this trip, I kind of compared my life to Alice in Wonderland, oddly enough, because she's, drinking, drink me, eat me, get big, get little, whatever you want to do, there's a substance for it. And I learned that as a child with the Ritalin or the lithium or the trazodone. When it's bedtime, well, go get the trazodone. Oh shit, I'm tired. I've got to go to school. Where's the Ritalin? And it was just this way to tailor your high to what you were doing. And this acid trip showed me that that's exactly what I was continuing to do. So I found other things like, kratom, and just when I want to be out of my head, maybe mushrooms were a better idea than OxyContin. And discovering the things that still worked for me, but hurt me less, I guess. And I think that that's what leads, I think that escapism and trying to tailor your high, like some people aren't meant to be sober, so you tailor your high to your life, and that can be dangerous. And I think that I think that psilocybin and things like it, so I don't recommend LSD for everyone, but if that's your jam, you can learn a lot about yourself. You can, through introspection, if you're willing to take that trip, you can learn a lot. And I guess my advice would be to learn as much as you can and then reduce harm.
Yeah, sometimes whether you want to or not, you're gonna fucking learn some shit. You don't have a choice. Man, 7 hits of blotter acid that's a lot of acid, and I'm not surprised that your brain started thinking in terms of Alice in Wonderland at all. But
Oh, people wonder why I sound retarded. I've done a lot of drugs, man.
does anybody else have anything to add to that? Drew, you've been chatting it up in the chat. You got something to add here?
Yeah, I think, valid points all the way around. If whoever's listening to this, if you're listening to this and you're struggling, here's the thing: you can learn from other people. You can learn from the people you heard speaking here. You can learn by going to your local meeting. You can learn from a number of resources, but ultimately at the end of the day, you have to do what's right for you. I think it's also important to kind of point out here that, these 12-step programs started up because there was nothing else. Like, there was no other concept of recovery at that time. Like, fuck, man, they even have like the old AA meeting notes talking about like heroin junkies coming into the meeting and how much it fucked up the old timers that at that time. Like, they didn't know how to handle addiction at all. So, we find ourselves today, where we're at now as a society and as a culture, that we have a lot more of a grasp on what it means to find freedom from that shit. We also have, at least in most places, has more of a grasp on, welcoming new forms of treatment, welcoming things like medication assisted treatment, like Suboxone, methadone. Tet was talking about that at the beginning. I think that that's being looked at more favorably, in a lot of places. But ultimately, at the end of the day, man, it doesn't matter what anybody else approves or disapproves of, as long as you're finding freedom. And like Gonzo said, as long as you're reducing harm in your own life, like, that's the fucking avenue. That's the ticket, and yeah, punk rock, whatever it takes, just do that thing.
So, real quick, Jeremiah, and then I'll let you have it. As you were talking, it almost seems to me that there's a necessity, at least at where we are culturally, for another system of recovery aside from the 12-step program, because it seems to me that lots of people have, okay, so things like ketamine and MDMA and psilocybin and all these things are being used therapeutically now, like pretty without too much stigma surrounding that anymore. So it seems to me like, even just hearing the conversations here, that maybe there's a need for another organization or system of recovery, and I mean, get real like psychologists in on this that are sort of open to the idea of like, no, yeah, if you want to smoke some pot to get off heroin, you should definitely do that. That seems like a no-brainer, so, or if you want to do mushrooms to sort of work through your trauma, so you don't have, you get at the root cause of whatever your addiction to whatever it came about in the first place. Yeah, you should probably let's look into that, and we'll do that, and sort of tailor. It seems like the 12-step probably works for a lot of people. It does, right? But that's a percentage of society that's going to work for. We have people in this group that would have never worked for, right? So there needs to be another system of recovery for those people, right? And I'm not the person to put something like that together, right? But I would think, somebody's got to be working on something like this. I don't know.
Yeah. So I got some friends that started up a group out of Tulsa, Oklahoma, and it's called Zen and the Art of Whatever Works. And what they've done is just kind of like taken aspects of a bunch of different recovery programs, and there's like no hardcore outline, like you have to work this program this way. It's like, hey, here's some information about local churches that utilize psilocybin mushrooms and plant-based medicines in order to, for therapeutic reasons. Here's also some some other resources if you're wanting to go a different route. And basically what they do is they just meet up every week like you would see it the traditional like 12-step meeting, but they're supporting each other in their own paths of discovery about, you know, what works for them and what doesn't. And I think it's fucking rad. And I think it's also important to point out that Bill W., the father of Alcoholics Anonymous, tripped acid in a therapist office and kept his sobriety date back when it was still legal to be, you know, used in that setting. So, you know, fuck, what's good for the goose is good for the gander, right?
Right. I have heard that story, and that's kind of funny to me. But yeah, Jeremiah, you had something.
Yeah, so essentially, like, there's a part of my sort of story where, like, I wanted to escape the desert that I lived in so badly. And there was this local mountain community. I'm not going to say which desert, I'm not going to say which mountain community, but what I will say is there was this local mountain community that seemed a lot nicer. And basically, the thing that happened was the only place